right, my English teacher friends, Kristian Kuhn coming at you again, affectionately known as the Bob Ross of composition. And I got another declarative thesis heuristic practice crack, and we're going to be using classic television commercials. And in this particular video, we're going to take a look at Winston's commercial in which the subject matters, their cast of characters were the Flintstones. And you might be asking yourself, why do I do this? Why do I create this stuff? Well, one is I really want to make sure come time of the AP language exam that my students know how to hammer home a thesis while pulling the strings of my declarative thesis heuristic. Two, they have to crank. As we know, they have 3 essays to write in 2 hours, and the introductory paragraph for rhetorical analysis takes yeoman's work. My students are very, very slow at this. So I just create these bell ringer assignments like this. You know, the commercial's like 4 minutes long, if that. You know, I play it a couple of times for the students. Sometimes we'll Socratic seminar it. Sometimes I'll just give it to them cold and have them write, right? So it's a super fast, you know, creating quick writers on the spot. But here's the kicker, number 3. It helps them with their reading. So usually, you know, we're working on speeches and letters and editorials and things like that. But commercials work just as well. And it's a good change of pace, a good change of rhythm to give them something visual. So before I dive in and unpack everything, please subscribe to the channel. It's called Kristian Kuhn, the Bob Ross of composition. Spread the word far, spread it wide, spread it to students, colleagues, and friends. So I'll be loading up content on a weekly basis going forward. So the video itself can be found on YouTube. Just type in Winston cigarette commercial Flintstone, something like that, and you'll see it. And like I said, I usually show it 3 times because I want my kids to be reading things 3 times. And that takes about 6 minutes or so. And then they just write. At this stage of the year, they're just writing. I don't really need to Bob Ross all that much for them. And I give them about 9 minutes to write the introduction and we're done. So I teach on a block. So I use these as bell ringers a lot. And I have many commercials that I've used for this. So immediately upon watching the video, students got to ask themselves the question, so how do I write the introductory paragraph? And as I've already alluded, we're going to use the declarative thesis heuristic. And I'm always saying this, you got to Bob Ross your instruction. In order for any of this to make sense, in order to demystify writing on any level, teachers need to teach writing explicitly and make sure that they're not just merely assigning it. So like Bob Ross, I use heuristics. He used something called the wet on wet technique every time he did a natural landscape. And every time my students and I tackle rhetorical analysis, that intro is going to be done with the declarative thesis heuristic, and our body paragraphs are going to be constructed with the syllogistic method. But here's the kicker. If you go back to antiquity, as far as the College Board is concerned, and take a look at FRQ2 prompts, which is the rhetorical analysis, implicit in any of those prompts, you got 2 questions. The first is, how does the author construct meaning? The second is, what is the author's intent? What my students do in a declarative model is this. When you answer the question, how does the author construct meaning? That constitutes and comprises the thesis statement. So we're going to lead with that. That's going to be our opening sentence. So I have my students take 3 sentences in which they answer the question, how does the author construct meaning? And in giving them 3 sentences, they begin to see how the terms and the devices and the techniques interrelate, interconnect, you know, have unity with each other, communicate with each other. So I don't want them to say, the diction creates meaning, right? No. There's like usually 3 things that construct the meaning. So I want them to, you know, focus on that in their read. And then 1 big fell swooping sentence about the author's intent. So it's going to be a total of 4 sentences. So 3 construction of meaning, 1 authorial intent. Let's look at that graphically. So as I said, you begin with the thesis. You're going to answer the question, how does the author construct meaning, right out of the gate? You got to sprinkle in a little bit of context and background, and that usually takes the form of like the exigence, the universal truth, the universal theme. I tell my students to focus on their tier 2 level vocabulary. All I mean by that is it's an academic paper, it's an academic pursuit, so students should be using SAT level caliber words. I run intensive word study academies with my students, so their vocabs augment exponentially over the course of the academic year with me. And then I know many of you are familiar with how I teach sentence constructs. I use a seminal text called Write It Right by Strunk and White, and they have something called rule number 18, in which they espouse the idea that there's 12 different ways to cobble together a single sentence. But in addition to that, there's 20 different patterns to those types. So in my models and exemplars, I'm going to show you some syntactical ninja magic that sometimes I just use to demonstrate for my students, and ultimately they can in turn do it themselves. So quick recap: 3 plus 1, 3 construction of meaning, 1 authorial intent, and it will look like this. Here's exemplar number 1. I'm just going to read it and then I'll unpack it. Winston's purpose is simple and clear: to get young children hooked to this particular brand of cigarettes. Logically, the intended target audience for cartoons is elementary age kids. So in juxtaposing the Flintstones with this product, the manufacturer is attempting to be sly in announcing their intent. While kids are emotionally connecting with their favorite cast of characters, they are simultaneously developing an emotional connection to the normalization of smoking. The nonchalant effect of the male characters furthers this idea. So one of the things I tell my students to do is this. I really like it when my students do a little bit of explicit and implicit in terms of dropping and identifying the rhetorical terms, devices, and techniques. And in green, I've done that for you. So those are the terms, the devices, the techniques. And you can see, like for pathos, for example, I don't need to say pathos. I can just say emotion, and the reader's going to know, okay, cool. And when I say, even when I drop the colon in the first sentence, that colon's an indicator syntactically that I'm going to get at the logos, and just to really solidify it, I said logically. Same as when you say things like intent, and then effect is ethos. So as I said earlier, you usually focus on 3 of the most salient, germane, relevant terms, devices, techniques in the piece, and slap those down in the construction of meaning sentences, right? I only needed 1 sentence to get to the universal truth, the universal theme, the exigence. So that's easy peasy. And then I did not overdo the tier 2 vocab. I just had like sly, simultaneously nonchalant. But, you know, when you're using things like intent and juxtaposing, that adds to the tier 2 as well. That might be a little nebulous, a little pie in the sky. So let's do it all over again and take a look at exemplar number 2. And again, we're going to use that 3 plus 1 declarative thesis heuristic. I'll read it and then I'll unpack it. To normalize the idea of smoking for young children, Winston has America's favorite Stone Age cast of characters endorsing the notion that cigarettes are a totally innocuous plaything. In juxtaposing the Flintstones to a cigarette product, the manufacturers are making it clear that they intend on pushing their brand onto school-age children. Correlating the idea that leisure and relaxation go hand in hand with smoking, the message seems to suggest to kids that smoking is a great way to cut loose and unwind. Even the diction and tone of the male leads support this idea. So it's always 4 sentences, right? And in terms of the tier 2 level vocab, I have nice words in here. Good diction, like normalize, endorsing, innocuous, leisure. And again, you don't have to overdo it. Sometimes kids think that if they use $1 million words that somehow they're approximating good writing. Nope, 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 nope. Disabuse them of that. Stay in your wheelhouse, stay in your lane, be natural. Don't sound too pedantic or contrived, but flex the vocab a little bit. And you can see in green that I've either implied or explicitly stated the terms. Now, I'm going to unpack why I do that even more. if you're familiar with my syllogistic method construct, and if you're not, go into my YouTube channel. I got a ton of rhetorical analysis videos on there. Here's my rule. So in the syllogistic method, you have something known as the first premise, and it's a 3-sentence move that basically multitasks a topic sentence in which the kids are going to argue via the vehicle of the terms, the devices, techniques. And my rule is, if you implied it in the introductory paragraph, explicitly state it in the first premise, and vice versa. That way you don't have redundancies, and I really think it breaks the kids out of the habit of doing rhetorical terms, device, techniques, dumping grounds. And I also like the 3+1 model, because in the inverted model, where the last sentence is the thesis statement, those sentences tend to read like dumping grounds. The kid just comes and dumps a whole bunch of terms, devices, techniques. If you give them 3 sentences, the kids can kind of smatter them around a little bit so that it sounds less like a dump. And I think it's more skillful that way. All right, students, yes, you can. Teachers, you can too. It's easy, easy, easy. Here's number 3. Although rather subtle in its logic, the commercial is attempting to kill several birds with one stone. First, by having classic cartoon characters leisurely smoking Winstons, the manufacturers are suggesting that it is totally normal for kids to smoke. But at the time of its airing, smoking belonged primarily to the male gender sphere. Given this, Winston is also normalizing the idea of smoking for hard-working women. Same old stuff. I color-coded it the exact same way. Again, you don't want to overdo the tier 2, but it's got to be up there. And then typically you focus on 3 of the most salient terms, devices, techniques, and saying things like logic. You know, any AP reader is going to be like, yeah, that's logos, you know. And when you get into like normalization and things of that nature, you're into the logos. So it need not be explicitly stated all the time. And I really do believe this. I think if kids are explicit from top to bottom, it precludes them from getting the sophistication point. I think kids need to teeter-totter balance that explicit and implicit tack to writing this. So if you're writing with me, pause and give it a whirl. And if you want to reach out to me for any reason, you can reach me at teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com. Even if you got a good commercial that you want to suggest to me, I'll make a workshop around that. Note that I'm busy, so I got a lot going on. I'm doing free webinars for Perfection Learning, Applied Practice, presenting for NCTE, the College Board, lead teacher for the National Writing Project. So as we come upon the summer months, if you're looking for some PD, definitely hit us up. I have a website, www.teachinghowtowrite.com. Most of it's for free, some's for a nominal fee. And then the other thing that I have going these days is my own independent tutoring company that I call Write at Ivy Write. So I did all of my graduate degrees at Ivy League schools. I used to work admissions at Brown. So I'm pretty expert on the college personal statement. So students, as you reach that hurdle of your life, if you want help with your college personal statements and supplements, I'm the guy that can definitely help you out. Just drop me an email and we will talk specifics. All right, in the days, weeks, months, years to come, I will continue to make writing workshops for you. I hope this was edifying and good luck with it.